Yeah, totally. So in some cases, criticisms of it, it's referred to as, like gender identity ideology in some cases, as well as transgenderism.
Gender identity ideology almost sounds ridiculous. Yeah.
But of
Too many,
course,
too many
I mean,
items.
I think that there is, as I mentioned earlier, there is this kind of problem with, the way in which gender identity is kind of taken as this kind of way through which to, replace sex and law. And there are problems, of course, as you know, with like single sex services and spaces
I
for
know that
women.
there are problems. I know that the problems exist, but I don't agree that they should be problems. So we're gonna there's no evidence to suggest that trans women sharing the same spaces as cis women. There's no evidence to suggest that that does any harm whatsoever. There's a lot of evidence to suggest that trans women face a disproportionate amount of violence. So I feel like
However, I still believe that the women and girls deserve single sex services and spaces, including rape relief shelters, including battered women shelters, as well as single sex sports,
how
which is
come
I'm not going to get into the
you
sports,
know I have, just so you know, I got
but
two degrees in exercise science, so I'm not gonna.
but of
That's
course,
unfair. Yeah.
there's been controversy surrounding that.
There's been controversy, but there's controversy around gay marriage too. I don't think there's controversy is not a good argument. So why is it important that cis women maintain cis only spaces? That's how I'm going to phrase it.
It's not cis only spaces though. It's about female only spaces.
That's what I mean.
It's
when you
absurd.
when you say
It's really absurd that what you're doing is you're changing things to be like about cis versus trans.
but that's what you're doing.
It's rather about talking about males versus females.
But that's what you're doing. These trans women they are women, and they want to go into these spaces because they're women, because they feel safe there, because they do get abused. And you're saying no, you're not allowed here because you're trans. To say that it's not
males do not become female.
To say that this is
they're not there because they're male.
Hold on. To say that this is not cis versus trans is incorrect. It is.
No.
It is.
No, it's males versus females.
Okay.
And
is anybody arguing for
gender?
Is anybody arguing for? Hold on. Is anybody arguing that cis men should be able to enter female spaces?
What's the difference between a cis man and a man who identifies as a woman?
Because one's a woman.
One's a woman.
Yep.
Any man can identify as a woman and therefore is a woman.
Yep.
At any time, you believe that.
I mean, if someone decides on there has to be some sort of we take personal identification seriously in every other case. All right. How do I know that you're gay? You told me. How do you know that I'm gay? I told you. All right. We do it with religious identifications as well. What does it take? Self-identification. But what hasn't been demonstrated is that this is any harm to anyone else. And it always goes back to what identities ought to have their own spaces and why are they legitimate? So when you say single-sex spaces, it is cis versus trans. I'm sorry, that's what it is. That's what the conversation is about. What dangers are there? Because there's no empirical evidence to suggest that trans women sharing spaces with women, there's no evidence to suggest that that's a problem at all.
I would say, by contrast, there is actually evidence talking about the importance of single-sex spaces and why they matter for women and girls, why they matter for women and girls. And one of the things you said, we allow self-identification in every other case. One of the things
including ours, including gay.
One of the things that's been made regarding civil rights law is a parallel between sex and race. Now, do you believe that people have a right to self-identify with regard to race, and that should be respected?
I think it's an interesting.
Society?
I think it's an interesting conversation. I haven't done a lot of research on it, but I would not say definitively no. Right? So, for example, why